How is everyone doing today? It's your boy JG Domination, and today, as you can see in the title of the video, today we're going to be talking about quarterback Tua Tagovailoa out of Alabama. Of course, he is in this year's draft, and if you haven't seen my latest mock draft, I won't spoil it, but definitely go check it out. It has trades in it, and of course, you know, people aren't going to like the trades or the picks that I make for their team. That's fine. I completely get it. I see a lot of mock drafts where, you know, someone's making the decisions for Green Bay at 30, and I don't necessarily agree with it. So I get your pain there. I get the frustration there. But I do want to talk about Tua. Obviously, I've made 2 videos about him already, mainly about his decision to declare for this year's draft. And I really want to talk about his injury history, some new details that have come out, and basically my thoughts on Tua as a prospect. I do plan on doing these types of videos for other players as well. I'll cover some other quarterbacks. I'll cover other positions as well. You know, I might talk about some defensive players, might talk about Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb a little bit. You know, I'll definitely go in depth with some other prospects as well. Don't think I'm just making a Tua video for the sake of making a Tua video. But let's go ahead and get started. Tua, some new information about some potential failed physicals have come out. Michael Lombardi, who is a pretty good source, I would say, pretty good source within the NFL community, I guess you could say. He came out with a report that Tua had an undisclosed wrist injury in 2 failed physicals. I do want to say take these reports with a grain of salt, because I'm not saying they aren't true, okay? I think the last thing I want to do is deny a rumor that could be true, because we do that all the time during draft season, and some of them actually end up being right. But I will say it's draft season, which means it is smoke screen season, which means you can't believe everything that's out there, even if it is reported by Bleacher Report or NFL or ESPN, or hell, even these reporters. You know, it's smoke screen season. You know, take everything with a grain of salt. Everything isn't true, believe it or not, just because it's tweeted out by reliable sources. But taking it with a grain of salt, if there is an undisclosed wrist injury, just add that to the list of Tua Tagovailoa injuries, which include now this undisclosed wrist injury and his failed physicals, his ankle injuries, his knee injuries, and of course the hip injury, which is very similar to the career-ending Bo Jackson injury that he suffered a long time ago. But basically what I'll say, if it is true, maybe he does actually slip down the draft board. I mean, I think this would be enough to do it. But again, it's smokescreen season. Who knows? Maybe teams are putting out those reports, like the New England Patriots. I'm not saying they are, but I'm just saying it's kind of fishy. You know, we're getting close to the draft, and you hear these reports come out I don't know, 2 days after Tua said, and his agent said that he's 100%. I'm just saying it's a little fishy. You know, maybe you get where I'm coming from with that. Not saying it's true, not saying it's false. I'm just saying, you know, giving you the context of why it would possibly go either way, why I think it's a little fishy. But talking about Tua as a prospect, there's a lot to like, obviously. Obviously, his big question mark is his injury concern, even if this wrist injury is true or false. It's still a big-time concern. But I will say this, outside of Russell Wilson and Tom Brady, every other big-name quarterback, you know, except for, you know, Lamar Jackson, I guess, you can say has had major injuries, multiple injuries. You look at Aaron Rodgers, he broke both of his collarbones. He had a concussion early on in his career, had a calf injury, a knee injury that, a similar knee injury to what J.J. Watt had. But, you know, strictly talking quarterbacks here. And then Carson Wentz, you know, God bless him, talented quarterback, can never stay healthy. Every year it's something with him, whether it's a knee injury or a concussion, you know, getting hit upside the head by Jadeveon Clowney, you know, something like that. Deshaun Watson tore his ACL in college and tore his ACL in his rookie season. You know, so there's something there to worry about. Let's see, other quarterbacks. There are more examples. Big Ben obviously missed 14 games this past season, and he's missed games over the span of his career. So it's not like he's only been injured once. And if you want like examples of guys that have retired, you got Andrew Luck, who had a serious injury and ended up retiring before the age of 30 just this past season. And of course, Tony Romo, notoriously known for being injury prone, especially later on in his career. So it is what it is. A lot of the top quarterbacks have been hurt before. Hell, even Drew Brees, who had a pretty impressive like consecutive starts streak going, just got injured this past year and was forced to miss 5 games. Was supposed to miss 6 to 8, but he came back a little early. Shout out to Drew Brees, you true warrior, you. A lot of these top quarterbacks do end up having injuries. You got to take the good with the bad, especially with these talented quarterbacks. Hell, even Patrick Mahomes missed a couple of games where his like knee popped out or whatever. And he also got hurt in college. Josh Rosen, not a big name quarterback, obviously, but he had durability questions entering the draft as well, and he still went in the top 10. So again, got to take the good with the bad when talking about these quarterback prospects and talking about quarterbacks in general. You can't expect these guys to play all 16 games for like 10 years. That's kind of not possible anymore. You know, like you can't really expect that. And quarterbacks are still going to get paid. Quarterbacks are still going to get drafted really high regardless, in my opinion. But on the flip side, looking at it from a different perspective, it is alarming that he's had this many injuries in college and hasn't played in the pros, where he could potentially get even more dinged up and banged up and have more serious injuries similar to the ones he's had in college. But on the flip side of that, there have been injury-riddled college players who enter the NFL and just don't have much of an injury history. Might miss a game here or there, but don't really have much of an injury history at all. Like Mahomes only missed like 2 games because of his knee popping out, but in college he's missed time and had more like serious injuries compared to what he had previously, you know? So it kind of goes both ways. Again, you have to take the good with the bad. You have to take it with a grain of salt. Looking at Tua strictly as a prospect, there's a lot to like. I do have a couple of like smaller concerns. I think like his deep ball isn't as great as people make it out to be. That ball kind of hangs in the air forever, splutters, you know, a little bit. But he does throw with good anticipation. He's, you know, definitely short to intermediate range. He can operate. I think he'd be perfect in like an RPO-based system on offense. But to me, I think he's system-proof. I think he can play in a lot of different offenses. I don't think he's just like a one-trick pony, essentially. So there's definitely a lot to like about Tua. I think for me, it's really injury concerns moving forward. And if that's my biggest concern, then to me, it speaks to how good of a quarterback prospect you are. Because if the biggest takeaway is like your injury history, then your game must speak pretty well. And for Tua, that is the case, like a potential bust. And I could definitely see it because, you know, injuries and stuff, again, it all goes back to the injuries. I could definitely see that being the case. But if he ends up panning out and staying healthy, I mean, man, the team that takes him, they're going to reap the benefits, I think. I think he can be a pretty solid quarterback in this league. I don't know if he'll be, like, transcendent. I don't know if he'll ever be considered, like, a top 5, top 7 quarterback, because the talent in this league right now is pretty damn good at that position. But he could be a franchise quarterback if he could just stay healthy, pick up on the NFL game, which I'm going to give him a good chance of doing that. Definitely. I mean, I really like Tua. I'm rooting for him. He's not just this quarterback who had one great year. Let's stop with the bullshit. You know, he came in as a freshman and came back from a deficit against UGA. He had a Heisman-worthy season in a year where Dwayne Haskins and Kyler Murray did too. And then this past year, he was on track to do some pretty good things. Obviously, he wasn't going to win the Heisman because, well, Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts say hello. But he was on track to do some pretty good things, even in a game against LSU where he's banged up and just doesn't look like the same quarterback. He still shredded the nation's top like defense and top team overall. He still shredded them for over 400 plus yards and had himself a hell of a game. He did have that weird fumble where like he was running and the ball just slipped out of his hand, and yeah, like he had that happen to him. Very weird, like one in a million type of play, but again, like, even when Tua was banged up, he was still playing well, you know? And yes, he does have great talent around him. What is he supposed to do? Tell all of the 5-star recruits, hey, don't come to Alabama. I only want walk-ons, transfers, and shitty recruits. Like, what's he supposed to say? You know, yeah, he does play with very talented players. Can't really blame him for that. It ain't his fault that he gets to play with, you know, one of the top, if not the top receiving core in the nation of Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Devonta Smith, and Waddle, who all of those guys will be first-round picks within the next 2 years. Obviously, Jeudy and Ruggs will probably be 2 of the first 3 receivers taken. So, again, when it comes to Tua, take the good with the bad. Obviously, the injuries, you definitely need to be concerned about that because it could rear its naked. But again, when you look at a lot of these quarterbacks who are at the top or near the top, they've all had injury concerns as well. You know, throughout their NFL career, they don't have this perfect billing of health. So you definitely got to take that into consideration. Another quarterback I didn't even mention was Cam Newton and Matthew Stafford. Even Stafford has been one tough SOB throughout his career, and he just missed like 8 games this year. And Cam Newton, of course, has been dealing with a lot of injuries the last couple of seasons. So it is what it is. Again, take the good with the bad with these quarterbacks. But let me know how you feel about Tua down in the comments. Do you think his injury history will prevent him from being like a good quarterback? Do you think it's something he can overcome? Do you think even if he stays healthy, he'll be a bust? Or do you think he'll pick up on the NFL game and at least be a solid quarterback? Let me know how you feel down in the comments below. And peace out.